You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Glad to have you today for a midweek edition of the Doug Collins podcast. Always remember, share the podcast. Share the link. You find it by our podcast. Of course, if you found it now, either somebody shared the link or you found it on where you get your podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe so you can hear it regularly Monday through Friday. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week that we share on the podcast. We have a lot of great information. Always have Friday's Finest with Chip and James, something that you don't want to miss. A lot of things going on in the world. We're going to get to those here in just a few minutes. As we go, though, it's a reminder, something today, this week has happened that just as a reminder that our men and women who serve us in the police and law enforcement community have a very difficult job. It is something that they actually literally put their lives on the line for us every day. And in doing so, it should remind us all that we have a lot of debt that is owed to them. And I'm a trooper's kid, and I was born to a Georgia State trooper, and he's still with me to this day, fortunately. It was always a concern when I was growing up, that my dad would go out for work and that might be a reason him not to come home because of his job. Something struck close to home to me this week was the death of a young man who was actually an intern in my office. In the congressional office, he interned in our office. He was a great guy, just one of those that you knew wanted to serve, wanted to be a part. His name was Chase Redner. And Chase was killed this week on doing a crime accident investigation for the Georgia State Patrol on I-75. A young man with much life ahead of him, and this is sad for not only his family and those who knew him, but also for the Georgia State Patrol family who also lost another trooper last month in a car accident. So I'm going to start off today. I went a little long on the intro, but I want you to just stop and think. For all of the crazy people out there who think that defunding the police is a good thing, for those who think that, getting rid of the people who actually go out there and put their life on the line for us, it can be replaced by psychiatrists and counselors. Again, please step back and admit you're wrong. Please step back and admit that there's a place for those who do it right. There's always an argument for those, if they do it wrong, to get rid of them from any profession. But these men and women do it every day, and many times with no thanks at all. And it's in moments like this that I just want to remember Chase and for what he did for my office, but also what he did for the state of Georgia. And with that, I'll come back after the break and we'll get into today's podcast. Hey, folks, when you look out and you see the country and just the disarray it is, you see the Biden administration, you see the wholesale prices have just went through the roof again. Inflation is tearing us up. If you have your finances all impinged in just a few areas, if you're just in stocks and bonds and you're not diversified, I got some news for you. You need a navigator. You need somebody to help you get to where you need to go with those finances. And I can't think of anybody better to do that than my friends at Legacy Precious Metals. You need precious metals in that portfolio. You need gold and silver. And Legacy Precious Metals, the folks there, they're the navigators. They know how to deal with tough times. They know and how to look ahead and take your personal situation and make it something that can be workable for you in the long term, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the one you're most concerned about. You need to make sure that your personal finances and your retirement are secure. You need folks like Legacy Precious Metals helping you in that. They will take the time to learn you. They'll learn your finance. They'll learn where your investment goals are, and they'll help you get there. And metals and gold right now, in this kind of crazy inflation, in this kind of crazy economy with the Biden's economy, is just, you need that help. And Legacy Precious Metals is the one to do that. So give Legacy Precious Metals a call, 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can always visit them online at legacypminvestments.com, and you can download their free investor's guide. Legacy Precious Metals, they're the ones you need. They're the navigators to help you through these turbulent times. Hey, everybody, Mike Lindell and the MyPillow employees want to thank all of my listeners, the great Doug Collins podcast listeners, for your continued support. To thank you, they're offering an overstocked clearance sale right now for the best price you ever use when you use the promo code Collins, Collins, and you get free shipping on the entire order. You get 50% off the MyPillow 2.0, the brand new flannel sheets that just arrived and won't last long. Get six-pack towel sets for only $29.98, and take advantage of the free shipping on large items like mattresses and mattress toppers. 100% made here in the United States and on sale for as low as $99. Everything is on sale, from the brand new kitchen towels that have the same technology as the bath towels that actually absorb dog beds, blankets, couch pillows, and much, much more. To get the best specials ever, go to the mypillow.com, and use the promo code Collins, Collins, or call 800-986-3994 and use the same keyword Collins, Collins, and get free shipping on your entire order while supplies last. MyPillow products, thank you. Y'all go check them out. All right. The interesting part of today's podcast is going to flow around it's just a funny story. We got several topics that I want to hit today, and just to keep you up to date with the things that you see going on in the world. Joe Biden is actually complaining about the media coverage of his age and his basically incompetency. It's basically hilarious to sit here and hear them complaining about the media that is fawned all over them, that has gave them every provincial coverage in the world, that allows his press office in the White House to, when he does do an occasional interview, which, by the way, he is one of the least interviewed presidents in modern history in the last 25, 30 years by far, in doing interviews and doing question and answer. He just doesn't do them. And when you do have them, you can actually see in his hands where he has cue cards with the press's picture on it and the question that they're going to ask. Now, as president of the United States, you ought to be able to think on your feet a little bit. Joe Biden is proving that that's a very difficult task for him. And a lot of it has to do with age and the seemingly onset of dementia-related problems in some ways. And this is not just Doug Collins, Republican, saying this. This is not just Democrats who don't like Joe Biden saying this. This is actually the special counsel, who said this as well, that he just basically couldn't remember things. And then they got all upset about, Joe Biden got all upset about why would he mention his son who died. And the reality was he was the one that brought it up. It wasn't the special counsel that brought it up. He brought it up, and that he was trying to remember when his son died. What year? And for them to get all high and mighty and puffed up and saying, we're upset that the media is giving us bad coverage, is just one of the bigger jokes that I've seen in a long time. I mean, I wish I could laugh at it because it's so funny. But the truth is they're reporting what they're seeing. And they're also understanding, because they're much dislike and distrust and hatred of Donald Trump. They know that if Joe Biden cannot win this, Donald Trump will become president, and then they have to deal with Donald Trump, and they don't want to do that. So there is, I believe, an ulterior motive to some of this press reporting going on, that they think that maybe Joe Biden will quit and they can put Kamala Harris or somebody else in to win the election for Democrats. Don't be fooled by thinking that any of the mainstream media, especially the Washington Post, the New York Times, Politico, Punch Bowl, or any of these others, are rooting for Donald Trump to win. They are not, by any stretch of the imagination. They don't want any Republican to win. They are left-leaning journalists, and it's just a fact. When you look at the way they position their stories, how they position their comments, how they add in extra things, especially in clarification on conservatives that they never add in on liberals. It's just there. I talk all over the country, and I tell conservatives who get upset about this, they'll quit getting mad about it, because it's just a fact. It's like asking, a wild animal to be something other than they're not. The press is going to be the press. And they have become emboldened over the last number of years to express their beliefs in more partisan terms. And you see it on the conservative side. You see it much on the liberal side, especially the print media. And this is just, again, to me, the absolute gall of the Biden administration to complain about any press coverage that they've gotten when the press has not covered the fact, for the most part, that he's treated differently in the documents case. His son has been treated differently by the Department of Justice in the investigations. The other witnesses and documents that have been asked for by Congress have not been followed through for Republican administrations, whereas they've been over backwards to do everything they could under Democratic administrations in the House under Speaker Pelosi for the J6 investigations and other things. It's just a joke to me that they would actually bring this up. But folks, this is where we're at. And we're 9 months into this now. 9 months of this left in a general election campaign. That you're going to see this more and more and more. The press, I think, if they can in the next few months to try and force Biden to do something or to change his ways, they're going to try and that. But if not, this will all go away, Joe. Don't worry. President Biden, you don't have to worry, because by the time August steps around, there will be no negative reporting about you. There'll be no negative reporting about your mishandling of Afghanistan. There'll be no mishandling of how you handle the foreign affairs with Russia and Iran and North Korea and others. There won't be any of that, President Biden. So just relax. Take a short walk or shuffle around the White House. You're going to be better because they're going to come back around. You don't have to worry about it. And to complain about it now is simply stupid. What else is simply stupid? Redistricting. This is the way that Democrats have fought back into contention in many states. Now, look, Republicans worked for fair redistricting and maps in the early 2000s, especially. I can give you an example here in Georgia. The last Democratic speaker here in Georgia, his last version of maps were declared unconstitutional, and they were redone. That did lead to finally representation that led to a Republican majority in the Georgia House that had followed the Georgia Senate in the early 2000s, 2002, 2004 timeframe. But Speaker Murphy, Tom Murphy, who was the leader of the Georgia House at the time, they put together multi-member districts. They did all kinds of gerrymandering. They had congressional districts running in single file lines, basically from Atlanta to Augusta to Savannah. It was just a complete total train wreck. Take 10 years in the future, the maps were actually given to the Department of Justice through the General Assembly that year under Republican help, actually passed the Biden administration on first pass. I apologize, not the Biden administration, the Obama administration, Justice Department signed off on them with no problems at all. We went down from having many districts in the congressional side, having multi-county splits, to where we limited those multi-county splits, but to almost less than a third of what they were. The districts were much more homogeneous to the areas and the concerns of the people in those districts. Look, redistricting is important when you represent the areas that are need be. When you try to force redistricting and make it an outcome that you want, that is when we get into issues and get into problems. Now, in looking at this, the redistricting in Wisconsin has been a constant problem. Now, their left has said that the Republican redistricting from 10 years ago was total gerrymandering. That was terrible, mainly because they lost and because there's been heavy majorities of Republicans in the state legislature in Wisconsin for a while. They finally flipped the Wisconsin Supreme Court into a very liberal group. And this week, the Republicans in the House voted for a bill that redistricted the state and made down to 8 basically swing districts, and had the rest were evenly split for the most part between those favoring Democrats and those favoring Republicans. I asked a good friend of mine from up in there who's been involved in politics for a long time up there, why would the Republicans go along with this? And what was told is that the Supreme Court, the leftist Supreme Court, had a map that was even far worse. So in essence, what by electing a Democrat governor in Wisconsin, and then coupled with a liberal Supreme Court up there, the Republican majorities in the House and Senate in Wisconsin voted for the lesser of two evils. Redistricting should not be about the lesser of two evils. It should be about taking homogeneous areas, putting them together, and letting those results come from the voters in those districts. Now, if you're taking districts and, again, this has been always the problem. If you're making districts out of thin air and you're trying to impart a racial balance or a quota, if you would, then those are wrong. And, I will say that, going outside of lines and doing those things that are forcing a condition is a different thing. But if you can actually draw the lines, make them clean, make them clear, and show that there is some kind of continuity to the maps that are being drawn, then that's a political decision. The Supreme Court's already said that. But it is interesting that when you get the governor, a Democratic governor, and a liberal Supreme Court, they can pretty much then force even a Republican majority in the House and Senate to do what they want to do. We saw this in Pennsylvania last time. So, look, a lot of these cases have been playing out. New York has had a congressional redistricting that will play greatly into the makeup of the U.S. House majority next fall. These are all part of the game. But, folks, it's why you can't not watch what goes on. It's just why Democrats are doing this all the time. Republicans took their foot off the gas in making sure this was being done appropriately, I believe, in many ways, because we just assumed that it would be okay in many states. And now we're seeing that lawsuits come under the state constitutions, not under the federal constitution. And we're seeing a rise in liberal gerrymandering that are providing seats that would not normally have been a part of. So look, every election and across this country has dynamics built into it. Wisconsin now has become one to watch, and not just from the state level, but from the presidential level, because this will be a part of the big picture, if you would, going into how Trump and Biden play in a state in which Joe Biden would love to win again, and Trump would like to win again as well. So again, how these races play out in the fall, turnout in Wisconsin, these are all things and factors that will be considered as we go forward. Speaking of, let me hit one thing. Speaking of the elections as we go forward, South Carolina primary is this Saturday, and Nicki Haley held this week a state of the race address. Some thought she was going to drop out. I didn't think she would drop out. She'll at least go through Saturday and get beat thoroughly. And again, don't be surprised here if the numbers are 15 between, I'd say 12 and 20% defeat. Okay. And some will say, well, if she got 12%, that's close. Well, not really. And considering you've won the governorship there twice, you're a home team person, so to speak, and the favorite child of the state, you can't beat Donald Trump, and you're not beating Donald Trump. The problem I have right now is I don't care how many people want to run for president. Make your case, run for president. When it gets to the point where you look ahead and there is no probable way, except for one, that you become the president, possibly become the presidential nominee, and you're tearing down the one that will be the presidential nominee, then it's time to probably reassess where you are. And that's where Nikki Haley's campaign is at this point. She is a surrogate for the Biden campaign, whether she realizes it or not. Every time she attacks Donald Trump, it goes straight to Joe Biden. Except without it coming from Joe Biden, it'll come from a Republican that the press will pick up on all fall when they run 30-second ads showing Nikki Haley talking about Donald Trump, from military to age to service, or whatever you want to call it, chaotic principles. These will be the face of the Republican that will face in the Senate and governor's races, and the presidential race will be the face of Nikki Haley saying these things about the nominee for president. Now, the only way she can actually even hope to become nominee is if something bad happened to Donald Trump in some of these court cases or something else. That's not the way that most Republicans, who, by the way, 75% or better, have voted for Donald Trump in these races when it was just broke out to just Republicans. She's not winning except for some independents and Democrats. She's went on national TV and talked about this, saying that there are states coming up on Super Tuesday where she hopes to have a chance, and that'll be Democrats and independents. However, that didn't really work out for her that well in New Hampshire, where she thought that would be her jumping off point. It turned out not to be. All I'm saying is at this point, she's undoubtedly given up all hope of the possibility of running for president in 2028 after I believe Donald Trump has won the presidency and served his 4 years, because there's going to be a lot of people remember that she is the face of the Joe Biden attack machine of the super PACs and the campaign this fall, because she is not acknowledging that her only path to victory is something happening to Donald Trump. And I think most people are going to look at that and become very turned off. And especially when right now, when she's not able, and she admittedly is not able to win Republican voters. And again, you're not in a general election now, you're in a primary setting. And for her to continue to say she can win is just simply not with reality. That may be her connection to Joe Biden, because many times he's not with reality as well. Another thing that I wanted to look at as we go through, and I've been mentioning this, and I'm going to bring this up continually in the podcast, is that we've been dealing with foreign affairs being an issue in the presidential campaign. And I believe this is going to continue. The Biden campaign, the Biden administration is actually announcing sanctions, more sanctions on Russia in regard to the Ukraine incident, to regard to Navalny and others, that the one that was a political prisoner that was killed. And that's fine. I think that's something that can be done. That's a way, a very rational way to look out at, to lash out at Russia and to try and cut their economic production so that something can come to an end in Ukraine. However, it is interesting to me that they will believe in working in the Ukraine area and sanctioning Russia, but instead of doing it the same with the largest exporter of terrorism in the world and funder of terrorism in the world, Iran, they choose to go the other way. They choose to lift sanctions. They choose to give them money. They choose to release money that had been held for decades. Remember when the Iran nuclear deal, which was a bad deal to start with, was passed under the Obama administration, the concern that many of us had who voted against it was that, number one, there was sanctions that brought them to the table. Why wouldn't we continue to just sanction them to where their own people saw the problems that they were in, that we could have even got a better deal that would have possibly cut them out of a nuclear race? Instead, we gave them relief from sanctions, allowed Soleimani and others to travel all over the world, which they were not supposed to do, and we gave them the ability to continue to build a nuclear device. If sanctions admittedly brought them to the table, and I've talked to diplomats, I've talked to others in military and others around the world who agree, it was the sanctions and how they were affecting the population in Iran and how they were moving against the government because of the conditions inside their country that forced them to the table to make this deal. Why is it not good now? When they have funded Hezbollah, they have funded Hamas, they have funded the Houthis, they have funded the other militant groups in the Middle East that are firing upon our bases, killing our service members, hurting and maiming our service members. Why is it not a valid option now? I mean, this administration just baffles me with the backwardness of their policies. Afghanistan, just withdraw, no problems, don't destroy any equipment, just get out. Ukraine, we still don't have an answer with, and now we're going to sanction Russia some more. Iran, been doing all this, and we don't sanction them. In fact, we give them more. Nobody's even discussed about the deal that was passed last year when we gave them more money and said, oh, no, the humanitarian aid, we can pull that back whenever we want to. Not much has been said about that. Again, this administration has a hard time dealing with the realities of the world. And I believe this is going to come out more and more in the presidential race between him and Donald Trump. I think there's a big difference in how the world reacted to Donald Trump. They did not do the things that they're doing now because they, number one, did not know what Donald Trump would do. There was a fear factor. There was a respect factor for the U.S. that is not found at this time. We've got to keep working on this because I think this is going to be something that's going to be more and more in the eyes of voters as we get closer and closer to the time for voting. Hey, today, before I let you go, I want to touch base on, I want to give you a story that I saw that was out of the Navy Times. I think it's pretty cool. Many of you are familiar with O'Hare Airport, and O'Hare Airport is one of the busier airports in the world. For a long time was sort of second only to, it was running neck and neck with Atlanta. Atlanta Airport is the busiest airport in the world. But the reason that it is named O'Hare, it was named after Lieutenant Edward Henry Butch O'Hare. And he was a fighter pilot in World War II. And right after December 7th, American battleships were devastated, but we saved our many of our aircraft carriers, which we were then able to carry on into battle, which began the process of beating back the Japanese and winning World War II. The story comes that on February 20th, 1942, the flat-top Lexington, the carrier Lexington, was steaming toward Japanese base in New Guinea. And when they were approached by two enemy boats, flying boats, which then were able to transmit their position back to the Japanese before the American fighters could down them. That gave the Japanese the ability to go after the Lexington. The fighter pilots were met by a group led by Jimmy Thatch, who was a legendary pilot. They met, they broke up, they intercepted one formation, breaking it up, downing most of the Bettys. These were the bombers, the Japanese bombers, the Mitsubishi G4M1, which were good planes. The second wave was coming, and they didn't, almost unopposed. They didn't see them. There were two American fighters that were close enough to intercept the second flight of 8 bombers. The two Navy pilots flew Grumman F4, F3 Wildcats, which were badly outdated compared to the Japanese fleet. The Japanese bombers dove from 15,000 feet. The guns on one of the Wildcats jammed, and leaving the fate of the Lexington in the hands of one American aviator who had been aboard the Saratoga when she was torpedoed and had only enough 50 caliber ammunition for 34 seconds of a sustained firing. And the Bettys had rear-facing 20 millimeter cannons in a daunting defense. The gunner from the Wildcat, Butch O'Hare, diving in on the Japanese formation for deflection shooting, and was taught by Thatch to lead his target, which all of us who grew up hunting understand leading your target. O'Hare flamed out one Betty on his first pass, then came back from the other side and picked out another and bored in. Still too far away to help, Thatch observed 3 flaming Japanese planes at one time. O'Hare had 3 of them burning up. By the end of the action, O'Hare had down 5 of the attacking Japanese planes and damaged to 6, close enough that to the Lexington that some of the gunners had actually fired on him. They'd gotten that close. After landing on the carrier, he approached one sailor and said, "Son, if you don't stop shooting at me when I got my wheels down, I'm going to report you to the gunnery officer." Thatch estimated that O'Hare used a mere 60 rounds for each plane he destroyed. It's hard to say which is more extraordinary, his courage or his aim. Regardless of that, he saved the ship. In April 21st, 1942, a White House ceremony, his wife draped the Medal of Honor around her husband's neck as President Franklin Roosevelt looked on, and Roosevelt promoted him to lieutenant commander. Later in the war, Butch O'Hare was killed off Taraway while flying a pioneering night intercept against attacking Japanese torpedo planes, an exceedingly dangerous mission employing tactics that were in their infancy. He had volunteered. Aviators throughout the fleet reacted with disbelief at the news that Butch O'Hare was dead. There's a footnote to this story, though, however, that's interesting. O'Hare resonates with Americans today because of this name, the airport in Chicago that bears his name. Ironically, though, O'Hare's father had been an associate of Al Capone. On November 8th, 1939, Easy Eddie O'Hare was gunned down a week before Capone was released from prison, supposedly for helping the government make the case against his former boss. His son Butch was in flight training at this time, learning the skills that would be put to use a little more than 2 years later in the South Pacific. Folks, if you don't believe in American exceptionalism, you don't believe that we're called to our best in times of worse, then just stories like that will help you remember. And with that, we honor Butch O'Hare, Medal of Honor winner, who saved his carrier and helped turn the tide in the battle against Japan in World War II. And with that, we're out of here for the Doug Collins Podcast. We'll see you next time.